you set up your business name properly, right? You want to check with either NameCheck, and that's not a typo, that's exactly how you want to spell it out, namecheck.com, and the department and your state's Department of State website. Why do I want to do this, Irv? Well, the last thing that I want to do before I make before I make t-shirts, before I make coffee mugs, before I make a website, I want to make sure that the name that I have is not going to be copyright infringement, and the name that I have isn't trademarked. You can check that as well. And the name that I have isn't already taken by someone in my city or maybe across the country. So as I start to maybe grow my brand and as I start to grow my company, I don't have to come back later and make a name change that's going to maybe affect the way that my customers are able to find me. So that's the first thing that I want you to pay attention to. Pick your business name. The second thing when it comes to setting up our business is we want to set up the business properly. What does this mean? You can do an S corp, you can do a C corp, or you can do an LLC, which is considered a disregarded entity. The fourth option that you guys can do is you can do it as a sole prop and then do a DBA. That's fine. Now, a little caveat: if the purpose of you getting business credit is for you to again legally divorce yourself from the business, then I would stick to the LLC, the C corp, and the S corp. I get this asked quite a bit. Irv, can I build business credit and can I get business credit cards just with the sole prop? The answer is yes, and that's going to be for some banks. But if you want to get some of those high juicy limits, LLC, C corp, and S corp is the route that you want to take. Now, pro tip: this is going to allow you to float bigger balances on your credit limits. The reason why I say this is because anytime that you get access to a line of credit, either a line of credit, a loan, or a business credit card, right? We're kind of gonna use that interchangeably tonight. It doesn't report over on the personal side defaults, or unless you're behind, I'd say 60 days, depending. Sometimes Bank of America, sometimes American Express. If you're late 60 days or more, they start reporting it. Some banks don't report any missed payments until you're in default. But more often than not, it's not going to report over on the personal side, which again ties into what we just finished mentioning earlier. And that is, you're able to carry a balance and you're not having a bank come after you and saying, hey, how about you start paying down some of these cards because your personal utilization is getting rocked and your personal credit score is now coming down. And so we're about to start slashing your limits. That doesn't happen as much in the business side because they understand the logistics of business is to continually use debt and recycle it in order for them to grow their revenue. The next thing that we want to get, which I'm sure Rad has covered with you guys, is your employer ID, also known as your EIN. Think of this, because this gets confusing for some. Think of this kind of like the social security number for your business. And I want you to think of your LLC kind of like the birth certificate for your business. Notice that the birth certificate and notice that the social security card are two totally different, especially for those of us that have kids, are two totally different documents. Our social security number in the personal credit world is like our employer ID. That's what we put on applications in order for us to apply for lines of credit, in order for us to apply for a home, for an auto loan, for a mortgage, whatever it is. Same thing in the business world. When you go to apply for some of these trade accounts, some of these credit cards, you're using your EIN. Over in the business world, we have what's called our LLC, which is kind of like the birth certificate for our business. That's how we created that person, which again, the disregarded entity, the IRS sees it as its own standalone person, right? And so now that we know that, okay, my birth certificate for my business is how my business is established, disregarded entity. And then over on the other side, which is my EIN, that's seen as my social. So now we blend that together, and now we're starting to form a business that we can then go out and get funding for. But like anything else, you live somewhere, I live somewhere, Rad has a home. Everyone on this call, even if you're watching from your car, you're eventually going to go home somewhere, whether it's an apartment, whether it's a house, whether it's a condo, whether it's a penthouse, whatever it is, needs to happen the same thing with your business. But an issue that a lot of people make is they end up trying to use a PO box. PO box is a big no-no in the business credit world, and it's going to get you automatically flagged, and it's going to get you flagged, and they're going to put a note on your file that your business is seen as unstable. And so if you have a brick and mortar location, fantastic, go ahead and use that. Now, if maybe you don't, and maybe you're a content creator, and maybe your studio is out of your house, but you're looking to scale your business credit because you're trying to get better equipment, you're trying to bring on some employees for payroll, you're trying to really scale, let's say, your media company, or maybe you just operate from home, maybe you have a lash business, maybe you cut hair and you're doing that from your garage. Hey, that's totally fine. You can set up a virtual office. Now, the one thing with the virtual office that I want you to consider, it's not a virtual office like what you're thinking. The virtual office, which is what I have listed on here, it's Regis and Opus are two that I usually recommend to my clients. These are physical locations that you can actually walk into and pick up mail. It has to be a physical location. That's the key word. It has to be a physical location that I can walk in and pick up mail. Some of these offices and virtual offices also include workspaces that you can maybe use. If maybe you're kind of just tired and bored of being home and working from home, you can maybe rent that space out. That works fine. But don't fall victim to getting a virtual office or a PO box that's literally just a virtual location. It needs to have a physical address you can walk into, because banks are going to use that as a data point. And I'll give you guys a little gem here. When you're picking the location, pick a location that you know is going to get a lot of traffic with credit unions and also has a lot of traffic with banks. Why is that, Irv? With banks, especially regional, and especially with credit unions, not so much the big national banks like BOA, but the credit unions that are maybe only 2 or 3 in your city or in your state, some of them have a rule that they're not going to fund anyone outside of a 40-mile radius. And so myself as a savvy business owner, I'm thinking, okay, let me go ahead and open up a virtual office that's maybe a little bit closer to a dense area with a ton of credit unions. So that way I know I can take a weekend and I can go out and introduce myself to all of these credit unions and build that relationship with them, which we're going to get into here in just a second. And I know that Rad nails this point home because he practically built an entire audience talking about data points and relationships. And so if you guys grasp that piece right there, it's going to help you execute way more funding than what you're probably getting right now trying to go after some of these bigger banks. Next, leave the Hotmails, leave the Gmails, leave the AOLs, leave that for yourself. With the banks, with the credit unions, some of them won't even accept your application unless there's an actual email, a work email, a business email that's attached to it. I'll give you guys some example here. Instead of irv@yahoo.com, let's swap that out for maybe support@irv.com or team@irvofficial.com. It gives, again, a little bit more roots to the data points. It, again, helps your business look more established to the banks, to the credit unions. A little hack that you guys can use versus just using maybe just trying to go in and plug all of your information into like the interwebs. You guys can bypass that. Just pay a small fee. Listyourself.net and ex.com. It's essentially what it is. It's a listing syndication website that allows you to plug in your information, and then it just spreads it out all over the web for you. And this is how your business can start ranking on Google. Do you still want to go to Google My Business and manually input some of that information and still work on getting your reviews? 100%. But one of the ways that you can speed that process up is by, again, listyourself.net or ex.com. Business phone line is crucial for a lot of business owners because they think to themselves, okay, Irv, if I get myself a business phone line that's, let's say, a 1-800 number, because I know what you're probably thinking. If I get myself a business phone line that's a 1-800 number, my customers are going to think that I'm too big to take care of them. And you could be right. But here's how I want you to kind of flip the script on maybe that way of thinking. I would only recommend or only suggest for you to get a business phone line. Again, if you're going to use it, right? But you want to have kind of like a mock setup, meaning this is the number that you're going to use on your application versus solely using your cell phone. Remember, there's 2 lines on the applications. You have your business line and then you have your cell line. You're still using your cell phone line in the cell phone section, but in the business line, use a business phone number that you guys can get with freedomvoice.com. I believe it's less than $25 a month to set up. Or you guys can also set it up through your virtual office. I know that Opus which we just finished talking about, offers it with a virtual office setup, or Regis, where you can get maybe a fax number and a business line. Some of them even offer a secretary, which is pretty cool. When the bank calls in or when the credit union calls in to verify that the business is what it is, and they say, hey, thanks for calling XYZ Enterprises, how can we help you? That's a data point that they're checking off versus just having the cell phone. Now, you can still have the cell phone set up, but one of the cool things about Freedom Voice and even some of these other business line services out there is you can just forward the call to you. I don't recommend for you to use Google Voice. Again, it looks unstable to a bank because you can just swap out a Google Voice number quickly. And so when you're building out these data points, it's all about the routes that you're setting up, which is what we're doing on this call. Here's a pro tip. If you wanted to, you can switch out the phone lines that you have. If it makes sense for you financially, and if it makes sense for you tax-wise, you can switch out your personal lines and put them under your EIN and essentially convert them into business lines. Again, if that's feasible to you. If it's not, leave it the way that it is and just get yourself a third-party number with Freedom Voice. I know that Verizon reports to both Dun & Bradstreet and to Experian. They're giving out anywhere between $35,000 to about $10,000 starter line of credit that you can use inside of the store. This is to get things like maybe a iPad, maybe a tablet, maybe a company phone. Maybe if you have a couple of employees, you can get them maybe a couple of iPhones or a couple of Samsung Galaxies, whatever it is. Those lines do report. Now, in order for you to get those accounts, you want to make sure that you're speaking to the small business account manager. They're all over the country. If you wanted to walk into a store, you can ask them, hey, do you guys have a small business account manager on staff? I would try to visit a couple locations until you're actually speaking to that person, because if not, you're only speaking to someone. And I don't mean this in a degrading way. I just mean for the purpose of building, you're only speaking to someone that understands to sign you up as a consumer, not as a business owner. So you always want to make sure that you're speaking to the person that's going to help you get the results that you're looking to achieve. Now that we have the EIN, we have the LLC, we have our website, we now want to walk into a bank because this is how relationships are built, and we want to open up our business bank account. They're going to ask for some simple documents, which you should already have. Your articles of organization, which you should already have when you set up your LLC or your corp. You want to have your EIN, which you should have because you can get for free on irs.gov. And guys, if this is a lot, and if you didn't want to maybe set it up yourself by going through your Department of State's website, you can go on websites like LegalZoom. You can contact a local attorney's office to become the registered agent for you and just set it up. Just pay the fee and delegate it out. There's nothing wrong with not having to do all the work. We do that all the time, where I know that I'm not the best web designer, and I know that I'm not the best when it comes to creating, let's say, funnels for some of our products. And so guess what we do? We delegate that to someone who can do it a lot faster than we can, so that we can focus on what we do best, and that's operate our business. Pro tip on this: relationships are the secret weapon when it comes to getting higher funding. I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but I really want you guys to get this part. Relationships are a secret weapon when it comes to getting higher funding. Regional banks and credit unions tend to favor startups and small business owners the most.